So we're going to have to think hard. What will you do? Because it is coming. The mark of the beast is coming, and it is an authorization to buy and sell. And soon you will make a choice to obey Sunday law or God. You could keep your job, your house, you could provide food, clothing, you could go have fun. You could be accepted and part of the mainstream. And if you choose not to worship on Sunday, but instead worship on Saturday, you will lose your job, your house. You won't be able to buy anything or sell anything. You will be hated, persecuted, and likely killed. Everyone is going to have to make a choice. Everyone. So what will you choose and why? And the main question is to really think about, to be honest, do you have the power to make such a courageous stand? Today, we're going to look at the Sunday laws enacted in history and the results from it. We'll touch on Constantine, Puritans, what happened with the Breckinridge Sunday Bill, A.T. Jones and Senator Blair, things that happened in the early 1900s, and then the rise of Christian nationalism, Project 2025 and Mr. Sunday Law, the Religious Liberty Commission, the Faith-Based Committee, something called the NRA, it's not the National Rifle Association, and 2025 legislation, the Union of Church and State, bringing in the National Sunday Law. So buckle up, here we go. Now, it's been kind of like making popcorn. You know, you ever see these guys, the little pop lights, the Prestos? I remember having one as a kid, and when you put the popcorn kernels in and you turn it on, it's only like one kernel. And then you got to wait, and then another, and then you wait, and then some more, and then a lot more, and then you're finally got a bowl full of popcorn. And that's like Sunday law has been over the last 100+ years. We will see legislation rise, and then that's it. And then we'll see some more legislation, and then that's it. And what I'm about to present is a lot of legislation. Now, first we'll start with this cute little video.
Oh, where's Daddy? He's going to be late for church. I suppose he's still dressing.
No, he went out.
Oh?
Yeah, he pushed Grandma to the park.
My, what a beautiful morning.
Darling, you aren't even dressed. You'll be late for church.
I'm not going.
You're not going? Why, John, you haven't missed church in 20 years.
Not going.
Do you mind if I ask why?
I'm going fishing.
You're what?
But don't look so alarmed.
But, Daddy, you'll get arrested. Don't you know they've passed a new law? No fishing on Sunday?
Who passed it?
Just last week, the League for Elderly Democracy passed it.
That's right, and now everyone has to go to church.
But Grandma doesn't go to church.
That's because she has a health certificate. If you're old enough, you can get a health certificate and you don't have to go.
That's why there's no one on the street Sunday morning.
Aha. I hadn't noticed that.
Well, of course not. You've always been in church.
It doesn't matter. It's decided. I'm going fishing.
Really, Daddy?
Now, don't all look so alarmed. You don't have to call a lawyer and have me committed. I'm going to eat a big stack of fresh, fluffy pancakes, drowned in golden, sparkling syrup. And then I'm going fishing.
Well, children, we'll go to church.
Yep, that's coming.
Where do you get that?
Let's go back in time and let's look at where it began. So we go all the way back to March of 321 AD, and then you have Emperor Constantine. And on that day, Constantine decreed the day of the sun as a day of rest. Constantine decreed that Dies Solis, or Day of the Sun, should be observed as a universal day of rest. Constantine chose Sunday to be the day for Christian worship, as it already enjoyed special status in the Roman week. It was named after the pagan sun god Invictus. We move on through time. We have papal Rome tyranny, the 1260 years of church and state. The Bible forbidden, except for priests, the Inquisition, death and torture to those who do not comply. And this is going to happen again, except we already know it won't be the papacy front and center. They will be using their daughters to do this type of work. Now, let's take a look at a couple of popes and what they said. We have Pope Pius. The absurd and erroneous doctrines or ravings in defense of liberty of conscience are a most pestilential error, a pest of all others, most to be dreaded in a state. Pope Leo the 13th said, the Almighty, therefore, has given the charge of the human race to two powers, the ecclesiastical and the civil, the one being set over divine and the other over human things. And then another Pope Pius. It is not only the right, but the duty of the state to ensure that the conditions necessary for the salvation of souls are not hindered, but rather facilitated. And you know, by facilitated, they're talking about torture. We have Augustine of the Catholic order. Use of force in order to force unity between church and state. He said, it is indeed better that men should be brought to serve God by instruction than by fear of punishment or by pain. But because the former means are better, the latter must not therefore be neglected. Many must often be brought back to the Lord like wicked servants by the rod of temporal suffering before they attain to the highest grade of religious development. And so we move on through time and we come to when the Puritans and the Pilgrims came to America into the New World. And what a beautiful picture here of praising God for making it. And we see the two colonies, the Massachusetts Bay Colony at the top, and then Plymouth Colony. And then this is a wonderful study, the religious dissenters, Roger Williams and Anne Hutchinson. And we could take a quick look here. The Puritans were very different than the Pilgrims. They were very papal-like, and they reminded me of some ministries and the way they treat people. And so you see here a wanton gospeler. He had to wear a sign around him. And then to the right, this was very, very common. If you didn't comply, you went into the stocks for quite a period of time till they let you out. Now, Roger Williams. As a preacher standing for civil and religious liberty and against the intolerance of the church and state, Roger Williams' preaching made a clash with the Puritan governor John Winthrop and the leadership in Massachusetts inevitable. Roger Williams insisted that forced worship stinks in God's nostrils. He held God requireth not a uniformity of religion. Williams held that enforced uniformity confounds civil and religious liberty and denies the principles of Christianity and civility. No man shall be required to worship or maintain a worship against his will. And there he is. In the middle of the night, he got warning that the governor was going to take him and he would be killed. And so he set off on foot in the middle of winter in the snow. He was very, very sick. And he went out there not knowing where he was going to go, where he was going to sleep, but he trusted God. And God brought some native Indians to show him mercy, take him in, and nurse him back to health. He was eventually reunited with his family. He said this, God requireth not uniformity of religion. Oh, I just read that. Well, here's another really cool picture here of the stocks. This really did happen. Now, William Pitt, moving on through time, we're now coming up to 1783. And the British statesman and Prime Minister William Pitt the Younger once stated in a speech in the House of Commons that necessity is the plea for every infringement of human freedom. It is the argument of tyrants. It is the creed of slaves. And we are going to see now in 2025 that this same argument is being used. Necessity. The founding fathers, the truth about separation of church and state. So we're just going to highlight on 4 statements by the founding fathers. There were so many to choose from. So here we have Thomas Jefferson, 1808, erecting the wall of separation between church and state is absolutely essential in a free society. I contemplate with sovereign reverence that act of the whole American people, which declared that their legislator should make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state. And then we have Ben Franklin. Well, he's not a really good guy, but he did say something really amazing. When a religion is good, I conceive it will support itself. And when it does not support itself, so that its professors are obliged to call for the help of the civil power, 'tis a sign, I apprehend, of its being a bad one. And then we have James Madison. He made two cool statements. Conscience is the most sacred of all property. And then we are teaching the world the great truth that governments do better without kings and nobles than with them. The merit will be doubled by the other lesson that religion flourishes in greater purity without than with the aid of government. Abraham Lincoln. Our reliance is in the love of liberty which God has planted in us. Our defense is in the spirit which prizes liberty as the heritage of all men, in all lands, everywhere. Destroy this spirit, and you have planted the seeds of despotism at your own doors. Familiarize yourself with the chains of bondage, and you prepare your own limbs to wear them. So speaking of Abraham Lincoln, now let us turn to the NRA, the National Reform Association. Raised up in 1864, Ellen White called it the National Reform Movement. She had much to say about it, and we'll take a look at something she said in a moment. Now, the National Reform Movement had pushed some legislation through, and it almost passed. It failed by only 2 votes, and this is Abraham Lincoln's response. To a few of the men who were on the committee of the National Reform Association, he privately said, "Gentlemen, in your former visit, you requested of me 2 things. During the first term of my administration, I was able to secure your first request. It is my hope that during the second term, I will be able to secure your second request." The National Reform Movement, Ellen White said, exercising the power of religious legislation, will, when fully developed, manifest the same intolerance and oppression that had prevailed in past ages. Human councils then assumed the prerogatives of a deity, crushing under their despotic power liberty of conscience, and imprisonment, exile, and death followed for those who opposed their dictates. If popery or its principles shall again be legislated into power, the fires of persecution will be rekindled against those who will not sacrifice conscience and the truth in deference to popular errors. This evil is on the point of realization. I would say that is true right now. So here's our National Reform Association website. And what's interesting is that it's very not professional. It is not powerfully backed. In fact, it's run by just a few people, and they're using a simple Weebly.com free website. They're not even paying for hosting. And so it's very little information on here, and it looks very weak. But when you look at the history of the NRA, you're going to see that it had a lot of power behind it. I believe it's just morphed into other organizations that we're going to be looking at in just a moment. Now, the NRA produced the Christian Statesman, volume 41. There's many volumes, but I was able to find this one, and it was very, very hard to find. But they produced this periodical. Now, the National Reform Association was founded in 1863 in Xenia, Ohio, and had representatives from 11 different denominations. So in my research on the NRA, I found that the Methodists were the primary ones. One, their major objective, the eradication of slavery from the Constitution, and two, the acknowledgement of Jesus Christ as the supreme governor and ruler of the nation by amending the preamble to state that truth. And here's what they would say. We regard the neglect of God and his law by omitting all acknowledgement of them in our Constitution as the crowning original sin of the nation, and slavery as one of its natural outgrowths. Therefore, the most important step remains to yet be taken to amend the Constitution so as to acknowledge God and the authority of his law. Now, on first glance, you might go, what's wrong with this? But when you dig deeper into the NRA, you're going to see that they are very Catholic in their beliefs. They're very strong about the creeds. So we know that the creeds come from popery and they're not good. We have only one creed, and that's our Bible. They are Trinitarians, and what their primary objective, it was then and it is now, is introducing Sunday law, making an amendment so that Sunday national law would take place in this country. And that is a tactic we're seeing. Everybody comes forward with either necessity or history, or in this case, making it look like it's just we're going back to our Christian heritage. But you have to ask, which heritage? Moving on a little bit further in time, we're in 1888, and this brave stand taken for liberty. This was such a wonderful thing that I did, was read this transcript of A.T. Jones and his brave stance at the Blair Senate hearing in 1888. In 1888, there was a bill introduced by Senator Henry Blair from Connecticut that provided for a national Sunday law. After several hearings, it was about to be enacted. Alonzo Trevier Jones, editor of the American Sentinel for Religious Liberty, challenged the bill with a powerful and consistent argument, and the bill was defeated. The hearing was published in 1889 in a booklet entitled The National Sunday Law. Jones' full argument against the Blair Sunday Bill in 1888 is here provided with his own amendments. This book has shocked the minds of the most able defenders of religious liberty due to its logical consistency. And so let us see a little clip, 5 minutes long, about what happened. This was a reenactment, so these are not the real characters.
In May of 1888, Senator Henry Blair of New Hampshire proposed legislation to limit secular activities on Sundays within the jurisdiction of the United States federal government. Senator Blair made it clear that the aim of his bill was to preserve the first day of the week as a day of rest and religious observance. The bill was referred to the Senate Committee on Education and Labor, where Blair was chairman. Among those who raised objections to the proposed legislation was Alonzo T. Jones.
Sir, you may speak of the power of the majority in social and civil matters, but there is no majority, however large, that can invade the territory of a man's religion. Not in this land, not under our Constitution.
Mr. Jones, you fail to recognize the right, and more importantly, the responsibility of the state to protect the welfare of the people as a whole.
Senator, it seems that you fail to recognize the clear distinction between man's responsibility to the state and his duty toward God. The first, he must render under the force of law. The second, duty to God, must be carried out only under the force of love, and that freely, voluntarily. No law can command love.
But the law of the state must protect the people to carry out their duty to God. Our Sunday law is written to ensure the preservation of the Lord's Day for the benefit of the people.
An admirable goal, Senator Blair, but completely unnecessary. Our Constitution already recognizes the rights of the people with respect to their religion. Your Sunday law would add nothing to our fundamental freedoms. It would rather add restrictions.
I'm afraid, sir, that you are blind to the realities of our age. If men owe a duty to God and do not willingly perform it, they become a corrupting influence in society.
This proposed Sunday law would have a corrupting influence by introducing force and coercion into its observance.
On the contrary, the intended effect is to enhance the Sabbath. If men do not consent to honor the Lord's day, if their actions on that day are unrestrained by civil law, excuse me, then they trample on the very rights of those who would honor and observe the day as holy unto the Lord.
With all due respect, Senator, can you not see that your Sunday bill proposes to trample on the rights of the religious minorities? Do you really want to revert to those dark ages where church and state united to force men to violate their conscience and conform to an officially established religion?
Now, that is an unworthy comparison, sir. Our Sunday law is for the ultimate benefit of the whole society. Is it not a legitimate function of the state to legislate on behalf of the common good?
The common good of which you value so highly is not served by restricting the rights of one man's conscience in order to enlarge the rights of another. It is best served by the freedoms upon which this republic was established. State-sponsored religious coercion defies the clear intent of the Founding Fathers.
But this law provides an exemption for those who wish to worship on another day. Jews, Seventh-day Baptists, your Seventh-day Adventists, for example, who observe Saturday as the Sabbath. So where's the problem?
The problem is...
Why, just this morning, Mrs. Batum of the Women's Christian Temperance Union addressed this committee in support of such an exemption. She has conferred with representatives of 9 different groups who observe Saturday rather than Sunday, and you know how many of those approved the exemption? All of them. Every single one.
Senator, I have great respect for the temperance principles promoted by Mrs. Batum's organization, but she does not speak for my denomination on the question of exemptions.
Come now, Professor Jones, are you about to object to exemptions that would certainly benefit your group and several others?
Yes, sir. As a matter of fact, we do object. An exemption clause would not change the proposed law so as to modify our opposition. Here is the principle, Senator. If the law were just and perfect, an exemption would not be necessary. Another thing, an exemption clause is nothing other than a toleration clause in disguise. Toleration is not liberty. It is merely a form of condescension, the majority putting up with the opinions and convictions of the minority. Our Constitution guarantees not tolerance, but rights. And we claim those rights as American citizens.
Mr. Jones, without yielding the point, let me move to another question. How would you react if we were to rewrite this bill as a Saturday law, with Saturday as the Sabbath, not Sunday at all? I suppose you would take a very different position.
To the contrary, Senator. All laws that attempt to force the conscience are manifestly unchristian and unconstitutional by their very nature. Therefore, Senator, we are against every Sunday law that has ever been made since the first one enacted by Constantine to the one you are proposing now. And if you changed it from a Sunday law to a Saturday law, we would oppose it just as firmly.
Senator Blair's bill never made it out of committee. But there were already plenty of other Sunday laws, which are commonly called blue laws. In fact, in America today, 49 of the 50 states have laws protecting Sunday. Alaska.
So in that clip, we also saw mentioned the Women's Temperance Society. And what's interesting is that the National Reform Association partnered or joined forces with the Women's Temperance. So I had originally loved the Temperance Society because they were, trying to go get rid of the alcohol and the smoking. But we often see how they link with these other organizations, as mentioned here. Now, there was something else. So we saw that necessity was often used to try to bring about the Sunday law legislation. Well, then there's this, the common good. Now, we heard that all during the whole vaccination for the common good. And we see it also used here. So we'll just read this from A.T. Jones in the American Sentinel, 1898. There is no more fallacious theory extant than that which is embodied in the common idea that natural rights must be limited by law in order to promote the common good. Natural rights are the rights given to man by the Creator. They are neither more nor less than what the Creator made them. To say that they need to be clipped and pruned down is to reflect upon the wisdom of the Creator. Rights were given to the individual for his good. Among man's inalienable rights, the Declaration of Independence enumerates life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The more of these things an individual has, the better off he is, and the more of prosperity does he enjoy. And the more individuals there are of this kind in the community, the more prosperity and happiness there is in the community. What, on the other hand, is the common good? It is a very indefinite term. Each person defines it to suit himself. Government define it to suit themselves. Over in Russia, it is declared to be for the common good that the little children of heretical parents should be taken from their homes and sent away to be brought up in the Orthodox faith. In Peru, until recently, it was considered to be for the common good that no Protestant marriage ceremony should be recognized as valid by the state. In Spain, it was for the common good that Protestants should not be allowed to worship in church buildings. The list of instances in which personal rights have been invaded under the plea of the common good might be extended indefinitely. How are these things decided to be for the common good? Oh, it is by the decision of the majority, at least of those in power. And this is the way the question is always decided. This is the way it is proposed to decide the question today, and the only way in which civil government can consider it, in this country at least. A natural right, therefore, as limited by the common good, is simply such a privilege as the majority may see fit to grant. And this would take the matter out of the hands of the Creator entirely. It would leave no force to the term natural right at all. For what a person is allowed to have by the majority cannot be his by nature, by birth. Oh, how well said that is. The claim of common good is the communist call of the papal state. We then have the Breckinridge Sunday Bill, and its argument was this: be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled, that it shall be unlawful for any person or corporation or employee of any person or corporation in the District of Columbia, that's us, to perform any secular labor or business, or to cause the same to be performed by any person in their employment on Sunday, except works of necessity, there's that word again, or mercy. Nor shall it be lawful for any person or corporation to receive pay for labor or services performed or rendered in violation of this act. Now you can go and pull this up, the arguments on the Breckinridge Sunday Bill. There's the link at the top, the speech of Elder J.O. Corliss. I would suggest this is a really good read, but we're just bringing this up for you to do some more research. Now we do have inspiration. What should we do? Do we just kind of stay home and pray about it and not say anything about it, not try to slow this down? Because we can't stop it. We know it's coming. It's prophesied. But what did Ellen White say? She said, we cannot labor to please men who will use their influence to repress religious liberty and to set in operation oppressive measures or to lead or compel their fellow men to keep Sunday as the Sabbath. The first day of the week is not a day to be reverenced. It is a spurious Sabbath, and the members of the Lord's family cannot participate with the men who exalt this day and violate the law of God by trampling upon his Sabbath. The people of God are not to vote to place such men in office, for when they do, they are partakers with them of the sins which they commit while in office. So many people go, okay, I'm just never going to vote. Let's see if she says anything else. I do hope that the trumpet will give a certain sound in regard to the Sunday law movement. I think that it would be best if in our papers the subject of the perpetuity of the law of God were made a specialty. We should now be doing our very best to defeat this Sunday law. You see, the Sunday law, you would think, oh, it's just going to be done by the legislators. But Ellen White brings out that it's going to be the people, that's the people of the land that demand Sunday law. The dignitaries of church and state will unite to bribe, persuade, or compel all classes to honor the Sunday. The lack of divine authority will be supplied by oppressive enactments. Political corruption is destroying love of justice and regard for truth. And even in free America, rulers and legislators will yield to the popular demand for a law enforcing Sunday observance. So when we look at how this Sunday law has been brought about in Constantine's day, and then how it's going to be brought about at the end of time, because we've read the Spirit of Prophecy and particularly the Great Controversy, we see that there were 4 stages of the Sunday law, because it's not going to be an immediate death sentence starting next Sunday if you don't go and worship on Sunday. And it's not going to start immediately. So let's take a look at the 4 stages of the National Sunday Law that's prophesied. Stage 1, we'll need to go and check out the Green Sabbath Project. It's going to be 1 day every week, just do nothing. Take a weekly day of rest. Make it a real Sabbath for you and for Earth. Don't forget Mother Earth. Don't drive, don't shop, don't build. And if you remember back in COVID and some of the propaganda coming out was, hey, look, climate change is totally improved since everybody was forced to stay in their houses. And you see, we'll see these type of advertisements like I found here. Embrace Earth Sabbath. Inclusive movement, diverse background. So this is how it will be painted in stage 1. And then it'll move into stage 2. A law to honor and worship on Sunday. But you can still observe Sabbath, but there will be social pressure, increases, a little time of trouble. And many Seventh-day Adventists at this point are going to compromise. We see that when we look at what happened during Nazi Germany. And so it takes a little effort to find these. Things are being kind of buried online, so we might want to save some of these quotes. The role of the Seventh-day Adventist pastors during World War II, particularly in Nazi Germany, involved significant compromises with the Nazi regime. The German SDA Church determined in 1933 that they would pursue a policy of collaboration with the Nazi regime for the survival of the church. This led to various compromises, including providing the Nazis with the names of radical Reform Adventists who opposed military service and working on the Sabbath, resulting in these individuals being jailed or executed. The Adventist Church also amended its teachings on health to support Nazi eugenics and sterilization programs, expelled Adventists of Jewish descent, and restricted their activities to religious instruction only. In 1940, the church sent a circular to pastors instructing them to support total war and make all Adventist young men available for service in the German army. The church leaders claimed that these compromises were necessary for the survival of the church. Necessity, necessary, we keep seeing that word. And then we move into stage 3. The law prohibits worship on Sabbath. Only can worship on Sunday. Fines and imprisonment imposed. Cannot buy or sell. We can read about this Revelation 13:17, which we've already studied, and then Daniel 11:43. You know, it'll be really easy for them to do this. You're thinking, well, how could they stop me from going over to my friends' houses, my brothers and sisters, and worshiping together? Well, now you see why they've had to install all the cameras everywhere and the drones and the surveillance with our phones. And then we move to stage 4, the death decree. But then we see something else tied with that. We're going to see Satan personate Christ. It is the last great act of the drama, and it provides, as Ellen White said, the impetus for death decree. And then here are scripture references: Revelation 12:17, Daniel 11:44 and 45. Now, the Bill of Rights. Separation is clearly understood. The first clause in the Bill of Rights states that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. Establishment clause of the First Amendment often interpreted to require separation of church and state. And for approximately the first 150 years of this country's existence, there was virtually no debate over the meaning of this clause. As the citizenry became more diverse, however, challenges arose to existing laws and practices, and eventually the Supreme Court was called upon to determine the meaning of the Establishment Clause. Now, I disagree with that last statement. I didn't write this. I would say it's more like, as the Catholics obtained positions of power in all government in every sector of America, and that they could finally be of influence, not just in legislature, but with money, that is why we're seeing the growth of this. Though not explicitly stated in the First Amendment, the clause is often interpreted to mean that the Constitution required the separation of church and state. And so here we have today our Supreme Court, and take a look how many are Catholic. So that's quite a bit there, wouldn't you say? We got one Protestant and one person who is of Jewish faith. So you can see how it would be very easy to enact a national Sunday law. Now, this is the interesting part. You can go pull up case law, and you are going to see some very strong cases for separation of church and state. I listed just a few of them here. We're going to highlight the McCreary County versus American Civil Liberties Union ruled that displaying the 10 Commandments in public schools and courthouses violated the Establishment Clause. That's interesting. And also we see striking down the mandatory Bible reading and prayer in public schools is unconstitutional. All of this has recently been overturned. Now, here are the Supreme Court cases leading up to compromise, and you can go and read them, but you can see how the outcome here was listed. And this is an interesting one, McGowan versus Maryland, and the Blue Laws. So here is the Supreme Court ruled on the matter, a case filed by employees of a large department store. And these employees were fined for selling merchandise to include floor wax and toys on Sunday in violation of state law. This is 1961. Now, when I grew up, and I grew up in the late 60s and the 70s, the stores were closed on Sunday. Even the grocery stores were closed. But, and so I never heard of this. I thought actually it was normal to grow up, but then I went to a Methodist church. Now, going back to the case, they argue that the statute was intended to encourage church attendance and to induce those with dissenting religious beliefs to join predominant religious groups in their Sabbath. The court, while acknowledging the religious origins of the Sunday blue laws, and they're called blue laws, and there's a bunch of myths around this. I've heard it said it's because the paper that the laws were written on were blue, held that they were constitutional. Now, much of the religious language had been removed from the statute, excluding a single remaining reference to the Lord's Day, and many of the restrictions had been lifted. The court's opinion by Chief Justice Earl Warren held that the laws were permissible regulations under the state's police powers to regulate in the interest of public health, just like COVID. The interest of public health, we can overturn the Constitution, Bill of Rights, and case law. Safety, welfare, morals, and that the regulations sought to provide a day for leisure and family, not to impose a particular set of religious practices. And we are seeing that be a main argument today. The effect of the court's decision was to leave the regulation of Sunday activities to the states, resulting in a patchwork of rules that vary by county or municipality. And we're going to see that in just a moment, how leaving this up to the states is part of the problem. Now we have this very interesting case, the Lemon Test. The Lemon Test developed to vet laws dealing with religious establishment. In Lemon versus Kurtzman in 1971, the court established a three-pronged test for laws dealing with religious establishment. To be constitutional, a statute must have, one, a secular legislative purpose. See, they're recognizing right away they're not going to win if they go after for religion. So first thing, it has to be secular. It must have, number two, a principal effect that neither advance nor inhibit religion, and it must not foster an excessive government entanglement with religion. But they abandoned it. Most significantly, in 2022, the Supreme Court marked a change in how it will interpret Establishment Clause cases going forward. So while we were all trying to stay afloat in business, keep our house, keep seeing our families, this was going on in the court system. Isn't that interesting? In Kennedy versus Bremerton School District, the High Court declared it had abandoned the Lemon Test and instead will interpret the Establishment Clause in reference to, and here's this new tactic they're taking, historical practices and understandings. So we have necessity, we have morals, we have secular, and now we have historical. In the majority opinion, Justice Neil Gorsuch wrote that the lower courts had created a vice between the Establishment Clause on one side and the free speech, free exercise clauses on the other, a conflict he associated with the Lemon Test. Instead, he viewed the establishment and free exercise clauses as complementary and working together to decrease unnecessary government interference with religion. That sounds very Jesuit. Principles of the Constitution will be repudiated. So what just happened in 2022? It was prophesied by Ellen White. By the decree enforcing the institution of the papacy in violation of the law of God, our nation will disconnect itself fully from righteousness. When Protestantism shall stretch her hand across the gulf to grasp the hand of the Roman power, when she shall reach over the abyss to clasp hands with spiritualism, when under the influence of this threefold union, our country shall repudiate every principle of its Constitution as a Protestant and Republican government, and shall make provision for the propagation of papal falsehood and delusions, then we may know that the time has come for the marvelous working of Satan and that the end is near. And so that brings us to today in 2025. It is a total onslaught. We see here our president. Legislation passed, 10 commandments in the schools and a book ban. We see Texas, we see Oklahoma, so we see Louisiana. We're going to take another look at this Project 2025, the Religious Liberty Commission, Faith-Based Committee, and then we've already discussed the National Reform Association. And I listed it here because I think it's basically just morphed into the Religious Liberty Commission and the Faith-Based Committee. Government funding for Christian schools so they can compete for grants and government contracts. And if they get them, do you think they're going to be able to have free speech? Freedom to worship the one true God? There was a bill just passed, Senate Bill number 10. Now, most people were familiar with the 10 Commandments being placed in all the Texas public school classrooms. What most people didn't realize was SB 11 would allow the school district trustee boards and charter school governing bodies to set aside time for prayer and Bible reading. That got slipped in. So we're going to take another quick look here. It's about another 5 minutes.
Does the gentlelady yield for some questions?
Will the lady yield for questions? The lady yields.
Thank you, Representative Noble. What is the fourth commandment?
Are you referring to my to the way it's written in the bill?
Yes.
Okay, right. Keep the Sabbath. It's about us being here on Saturday. Is that ironic or what?
So what does it mean to keep the Sabbath holy?
Well, I think it's, you want to get into theology here? I'd love to, if you'd like to. I think it's really important that we take a day of rest. I think God, who founded the world, didn't need rest, and yet he took a day of rest after he did creation, and I think he was a good example to us to take a day of rest. And that is enshrined in our rules, in our Constitution, where it says accepting Sunday in our very early documents as a nation.
And so part of keeping the Sabbath holy is not working on the Sabbath?
That is, yeah.
And what is
a day of rest.
The 10 Commandments come from Judaism. What day is the Jewish Sabbath?
It is on Saturday.
And what day is it today?
It is Saturday. Here we are.
The Christian Sabbath is what day?
Sunday, in honor of the day that Jesus rose from the dead.
And we're scheduled to give this bill a final vote on what day of the week?
It's ironic, isn't it?
Would you be willing to postpone your bill so that we're not breaking the 10 Commandments by working on the Jewish or Christian Sabbath?
I love that you said that, because if we had not had your point of order the other day, we would have actually already completed that.
And so, Representative Noble, you're saying that you'd rather tell people to follow the 10 Commandments than follow it yourself?
I would have rather have had this bill passed the other day when it was time. And you know, that's really sad that we are under such a crunch in time now with the end of session. Our Texas forefathers only gave us 160 days to pass bills, and that's where we are in this session.
We as a legislature
140, I'm sorry, correction.
Thank you.
We as a legislature are about to force every teacher in the state to post the 10 Commandments in their classrooms.
If they are donated.
Do members of the Texas legislature follow the 10 Commandments?
Is that about the bill?
Your bill is about the 10 Commandments.
Yes,
I'm asking, do members of this legislature follow the 10 Commandments?
So again, this bill is about honoring our historical, educational, and judicial heritage with the displaying of the 10 Commandments.
The 9th commandment is, thou shalt not bear false witness. Are you aware of any legislators who have lied about anything?
That is, you know, there might be one coming up in a minute if you keep talking. We'll see.
The 7th commandment is, thou shalt not commit adultery.
Yes.
Do you think that members of the legislature should focus more on trying to follow the Ten Commandments rather than telling others to follow them?
Maybe they didn't have them posted.
It is incumbent on all of us to follow God's law, and I think that we would be better off if we did.
That's a great segue into my next question, which is, do you think our public schools are missing God?
Again, we are talking about historically what our founding fathers believed. I have a lot of quotes from our founding fathers if you want me to go there, and I would love to do that if you would like me to.
Well, you just mentioned God's law, so I was just asking if you think our public schools are missing God's law.
In some instances, yeah. I would not. I think that there's some amazing teachers out there that are showing an awful lot of Christian behavior and love and concern to their students. So I'm not going to paint that broad of a brush like you just did.
Do you think that seeing the Ten Commandments in a classroom might make a student feel closer to God?
Again, that is not the focus of this bill. The focus of this bill is to look at what is historically important to our nation, both educationally and judicially. But if you would like to look through some of those textbooks that are on my desk, you will see the foundation that our forefathers used when they learned to read and write.
In the committee hearing for this bill, you said that students should see the Ten Commandments in their classroom and remember, quote, God is watching. Is that correct?
What?
In the committee hearing for this bill, you said that students should see the Ten Commandments in their classroom and remember, quote, God is watching.
I do not recall that.
You said it in response to a question from Representative Bryant in the Public Education Committee. You don't recall that?
No, obviously you do, though. That was like 4:30 in the morning.
Okay.
We were all pretty sleep deprived. I don't remember in what response that was, if indeed that was a response. I do, however, believe.
The lady's time has expired.
Thank you.
The main question to ask now is, which 10 commandments are they going to put in those classrooms? Well, I have a slide I didn't put in here, but the bill was stating that it was going to be the Protestant version of the 10 Commandments. And I find that interesting. I'll be curious to see what actually ends up on the walls. And we see here two 10 Commandments. We see the biblical, the one that God gave us, the one on the left. And then we see that it has been, crossed out by the Catholics and rearranged, and substitutions on the right there. So that'll be interesting to see what actually gets on the walls. Now, the court struck down Louisiana's law just last Friday requiring the 10 Commandments, but that Attorney General says she will appeal to the Supreme Court if necessary. Oklahoma announced schools must incorporate the Bible and the 10 Commandments in their curriculums. How about that? Not just posting on the wall. And so now we're going to move into this 2025 and Mr. Sunday law. And we have Jonathon Berry, who was just selected last Wednesday. He's the principal author of the Sunday Rest recommendations outlined in Project 2025, which seeks to amend the Fair Labor Standards Act and implement a communal day of rest with Sunday designated as the default Sabbath. This is an interesting text exchange between Jonathon Berry and an SDA, and I'm not promoting the SDA website and their YouTube channel as someone to trust and follow, but this text exchange is outstanding. It gives the history with A.T. Jones and Breckinridge, and it is beautifully done in a short letter. So I included here for you to check that out. It might help you if you're going to put something together to share with your family, because most people, they're so busy just trying to go to work, love God, love their families, and they're not following the legislation that's slipping in. We see as Trump came into office, these headlines: Trump jokes his admin will forget about separation of church and state. We're bringing religion back. And here we have on the left, Trump brushing aside separation of church and state, establishes Religious Liberty Commission. The lady in yellow is the one that's going to lead it. Religion is so back, the conservatives make Catholicism great again. A third of the cabinet are Roman Catholic. Current Sunday law, we got Utah legislator okay's bill that could lead to more Sunday business closures. How about that? We can go overseas and take a look at what's happening in Europe, why it's been going on there for years. Germany is very strong on taking Sunday off. And this is interesting. This is very recent. April of 2025, they are now legislating how many vending machines without employees that a business can put in to make money on Sunday. Isn't that interesting? So they're being very nitty-gritty about this, about you are not going to buy or sell anything on Sunday. You're not even going to buy food out of a vending machine. Now, we'll take a look at what the White House says. We've got the establishment of the White House Faith Office. This was enacted February 7th. You know, Trump just got into office in January, and boom, February, we have this White House Faith Office. And here we have Pastor Paula White. She's been with Trump in the first term. He served as his religious advisor. And then we have this from the White House. This is interesting to read. Faith-based entities, community organizations, houses of worship have tremendous ability to serve individuals, families, communities through means that are different from those of government and with a capacity and effectiveness that often exceeds that of government. How about that? They recognize. These organizations lift people up, keep families strong, solve problems at the local level. The executive branch wants faith-based entities, community organization, and houses of worship to the fullest extent permitted by law to compete on a level playing field for grants and contracts and programs and other federal funding opportunities. The efforts of faith-based entities, community organizations, and houses of worship are essential to strengthening families and revitalizing communities, and the federal government welcomes opportunities to partner with such organizations through innovative, measurable, and outcome-driven initiatives. Then in May, the establishment of the Religious Liberty Commission. And according to the White House, it shall be the policy of the executive branch to rigorously enforce the historic and robust protections for religious liberty enshrined in federal law. So here you're seeing, just like in the video we watched between those two representatives, it is about history of our country. They're just forgetting Roger Williams and Thomas Jefferson and Ben Franklin and James Madison. They're forgetting that history. Trump's new Religious Liberty Commission is poised to attack separation of church and state. Here we have another write-up from the White House on this, to offer diverse perspectives on how the federal government can defend religious liberty for all Americans. I think they mean all Americans that comply with their form of religion. Now, what is interesting is when we look at who is on the Religious Liberty Commission. And the White House said it was going to be about 14 individuals. And I had difficulty finding a consistent list. One site listed 14 names, and they were different than the White House. So I went with the White House, and this was as of Friday. Now, I'm not going to read about them all. I'm just going to highlight some of the interesting ones. So we start off with the chair of the Religious Liberty Commission. And where is it at? Texas. It's the Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. He's very conservative. And then we have our Adventist, I would call him a Badventist, a nominal Adventist, Dr. Ben Carson. He's the vice chair. And then we have a Catholic, Imagine that. Cardinal Timothy Dolan, president of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. Here we have a picture of these two gentlemen, the chair and the vice chair. We have, of course, you got to have Billy Graham's descendant in there, Pastor Franklin Graham. And then what surprised me was Eric Metaxas. Now, he wrote one of my favorite books about William Wilberforce, Amazing Grace. Oh, I love that book. And so it was interesting he was selected. Of course, you have Kelly Shackelford. That's no surprise with her legal background. Here we have a Greek Orthodox, World Council of Churches. Oh, that doesn't sound good. We got another Catholic, Father Thomas Ferguson, author of Catholic and American. Yes, they've been seeding America for quite some time, as Charlie Chinnequay's book so beautifully pointed out. Then we have some Jewish people on this commission, Rabbi Mark Gottlieb. And then we've got a John Paul II teaching fellow, another Catholic. And then this one's really interesting. A former Miss California, USA, Carrie Prejean Bowler. And then we have a very credentialed attorney, Allison Ho. Finally, we will end with another rabbi and Dr. Phil. I saved that one for last. Is anybody laughing? Did anybody look at his background of all the sexual abuse charges against Dr. Phil? How You Can Stand Strong for America's Soul and Sanity is his book. Now we're going to conclude. We're coming down to the end. We've just looked at all this legislation. It's popcorn and it's really popping, and soon everybody will be eating from it except the people who are true to God. The most important thing about this third angel's message, Ellen Wright wrote, "Some I saw have not a realizing sense of the importance of the truth or of its effect, and moving from the impulse of the moment or from excitement, often follow their feelings and disregard church order. Such seem to think that religion consists chiefly in making a noise. Some who have but just received the truth of the third angel's message are ready to reprove and teach those who have been established in the truth for years and who have suffered for its sake and felt its sanctifying power." I need to read that last line. It is so important. It is the important thing. Some who have but just received the truth of the third angel's message are ready to reprove and teach those who have been established in the truth for years and who have suffered for its sake and felt its sanctifying power. Those who are so puffed up by the enemy will have to feel the sanctifying influence of the truth and obtain a realizing sense of how it found them wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked. When the truth begins to purify them and purge away their dross and tin, as it surely will when it is received in the love of it, the one who has this great work done for him will not feel that he is rich and increased in goods and has need of nothing. The most important thing about the third angel's message is that we will be sanctified in it and by it and through it. But not all will be sanctified. Remember, there were 5 foolish virgins. She wrote in Spirit of Prophecy, Volume 4, "As the storm approaches, a large class who have professed faith in the third message, but have not been sanctified through it, abandon their position and take refuge under the banner of the powers of darkness. By uniting with the world and partaking of its spirit, they come to view matters in nearly the same light. And when the test is brought, they are prepared to choose the easy, popular side. Men of talent and pleasing address, who once rejoiced in the truth, employ their powers to deceive and mislead souls. They become the most bitter enemies of their former brethren." When Sabbath keepers are brought before the courts to answer for their faith, these apostates are the most efficient agents of Satan to misrepresent and accuse them, and by false reports and insinuations to stir up the rulers against them. But we must be encouraged. God will have a people who will take a brave stand for him and by him. The message will be carried, as was the midnight cry of 1844, not so much by argument as by the deep conviction of the Spirit of God. The arguments have been presented, the seed has been sown, and now it will spring up and bear fruit. The publications distributed by missionary workers have exerted their influence, yet many whose minds have been impressed have been prevented from fully comprehending the truth or from yielding obedience. Now the rays of light penetrate everywhere. The truth is seen in its clearness, and the honest children of God sever the bands which have held them. Family connections, church relations are powerless to stay them now. Truth is more precious than all besides. Notwithstanding the agencies combined against the truth, a large number take their stand upon the Lord's side. This concludes today's study, part 3 of the third angel's message. Next week, we're going to look at what are we to do with the angel messages before we move into studying that fourth angel. But 2 things I want to share now. The first and foremost is that we should be looking to God in prayer and Bible and SOP and not to other men to understand what is going on. This was the greatest lesson I learned from the awful disassociation that happened by earthen vessels to us, and in our pursuit to share truth about Genesis 1:1. You see, we came to the conclusion of Genesis 1:1 by simply asking God to show us. We didn't go to other men, we didn't go to theologians, we didn't go to commentaries, we didn't use lexicons, just the Word of God and prayer. And God answered the prayer to Rowan and Joshua, and then through Brandon with a beautiful book he just wrote, Unearthing Genesis. Now I praise God for what happened. It was awful going through it, but wow, the great blessing that happened to me, because I learned, in addition to my daily surrender that I had already been doing, to go to God every morning as if he were the only one who knew what was going to happen, because I realized he is the only one. Although he has shared it in his Bible, but we got to dig for it like treasures. He is the only one who knows what's going to happen and when and what I was to do by his power working through me. See, that was the answer to the question at the beginning. Do you think you can stand courageous in your own strength? I assure you, none of us can. You see, I learned God wanted to be the one to teach me through his Bible and spirit of prophecy and prayer. And I learned to trust him so much more. We will need a trust that can only be obtained by time with God, a trust that can be shaken. And I tell you, every trust, every person is going to be shaken. A trust that can be shaken and still hold on to God and his truth. I understand now more fully what it means. Let God be true and every man a liar. You see, I have loved Uriah Smith's writings, but even in his Daniel in Revelation, he made a gross mistake, and he stated boldly that the papacy will not rise again. And we know that it did. And so I have come to really love the pioneers. I study them, I read them, but I go to God. And for a thus saith the Lord, it is written to understand what is happening at the end of time. And it is my first study with God. And yes, I will look at what others have written and said, but this lesson I learned was such a great blessing. And so I want to suggest, consider this. We'll be talking about it more next week. The second thing I can share now is that now is a perfect time to be reading The Great Controversy. Now, this book here on the left is a beautiful, large picture book. It is filled, I think, with over, 500 pictures, and they're gorgeous pictures. And even though I think it's the 1911 version of The Spirit of Prophecy, and I prefer the one on the right, The Great Controversy Between Christ and Satan, Volume 4. Oh, that's my favorite. However, this one on the left is what I started with. And I'll just tell a quick story and then we're going to close in prayer. When my father came to visit me about 10 years ago, he knew we were Seventh-day Adventist. And there was this beautiful book on the coffee table. And I was upstairs looking down over the balcony. And I watched as my father picked up this book. And I watched him carefully open it up and start looking at the pages and the pictures and reading. And he read for a long, long time. And then I heard him say, "Oh, I would love to have such a book." Of course, I came down the stairs and gave my father that book. And when he passed, it was one of the few things I got from my father. So I have the book I gave my father back. But it's such a beautiful book. You might want to go to Amazon and order one while you can. They're about $30. So I want to thank you all for listening. May God bless you in your studies and drawing close to the Lord to build that trust. And I hope you'll join us next week as we dig in. What are we to do with the three angels' messages? God bless. Bye-bye.